It feels like so long ago since I last covered Poppy Playtime, and that's, well, honestly because we just really haven't had anything interesting to talk about. We've only had one chapter of the game and, well, let's be honest, I've analysed that to death. And so I didn't really want to keep covering the ARG. I didn't want to make a video every single time the GIF was updated, but I do want to cover this change, because this change I actually think has potentially huge implications for the story, and I want to explain the two different things that it could mean and how both of them would actually be, in my opinion, very significant. So once again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, the ARG is this set of cameras that are set up to look like they are inside Playtime Co factory. There are 3 of them, and up until now we've only had changes on 1 of them. So you can cycle through these 3 cameras. One is in the main hub area where you first meet Huggy Wuggy, one is in the make a friend machine area, and one is outside the Poppy door, the one where we meet Poppy at the end of the first chapter. Now up until this point we have had a couple of changes. We had a cat bee appear out of nowhere on camera 1, and then that cat bee was it looked like it was dragged off of camera and its trail of blood was left behind, which is a little bit creepy if you think about it. And most of us, myself included, assumed that this was the enemy that we're going to meet in chapter 2, the enemy that we know pretty much is confirmed as being Mummy Longlegs, or Mommy Longlegs if you're in the Americas. Now what's really interesting about the new change though is that this change is on camera 8. It's the first one we've had on a different camera, and when I first looked at it, I thought, okay, cool, it's a grab pack hand, so what? And then I started to think about it. So you can see in this one, this grab pack hand is coming out of this tub of toys. This is where we brought the toy parts out to craft our own cat bee, and something looks like it's crawled in there. And if you look at the grab pack hand, it looks like an older one that isn't quite as, it doesn't look like ours. Ours was very elastic, and this one looks like it's lost its elastic, which means it's probably been used for a long time, or it's broken. Either way, it's an older grab pack, so whoever has this grab pack has been using it for some time. And this is the really interesting point, the point that I want to talk about. Who, or what, I guess, is using a grab pack, and why? Because we know that the grab packs are the way that we get around the factory. They are ways to open doors, and you need 2 hands to open some doors, and you only need 1 hand to open some of the doors. And of course, this is just a game mechanic, it's for fun, but the grab pack is actually very useful for humans. We need it to get around the factory. But what's really interesting about this is we know that Huggy doesn't need one to get around. We know that Huggy uses the vents, but even right at the beginning of chapter 1, when we turn on the power, he seems to just disappear, and he doesn't need any grab pack to do that. He has the full ability to get around the factory. So it's possible that any other enemies, again, like Mummy Longlegs, might not need a grab pack to get around. So if that's the case, then what is it that crawled into here? Now, I have 2 theories. They're only little mini theories. I haven't got like any super solid evidence. They're just my opinions. But I think there are 2 things that are being hinted here. One fits into my Coraline theory, which we'll get onto in a minute, and one actually suggests that there is another human being still alive in the factory. So in my previous video on Poppy Playtime, I made the connection between Coraline and Poppy Playtime, and a couple of people in the comments were like, why did you use Coraline in the thumbnail, bro? It's like, well, if you watch the video, you'd know it's because I'm comparing it to Coraline. But I proposed the idea that there's a lot of hints that Mummy Longlegs is going to be some sort of similar arachnid creature, something akin to the other mother in Coraline, and there's actually loads of little hints that this is the case. The main one being the claw being in the exact same position as the claw in Coraline. It looks like it's the same, it's made out of metal. And I do think that there's a deeper sort of connection here that I probably should have covered in a video, and that is the idea that in Coraline, the other mother was a craftsman. She or a craftswoman or crafts creature. She created things with her hands, and she did this to lure her victims in. And you know, if you've watched the film, spoilers, if you haven't watched Coraline, just go watch Coraline. It's a great movie, or read the book, either way. But the idea is the other mother crafts things that she thinks her victims are going to want to entice them in. So in the case of Coraline, she crafted her parents because her parents didn't give her much attention. The one thing that Coraline really wanted was attention from her parents. And so the other mother crafted parents, and even though they weren't actually parents, they were made out of mice and things, but she crafted them and then used those to lure her in. And I do think that there's a good possibility that the Mummy Longlegs in Poppy Playtime, whenever we see them, is going to be something similar. It's going to be something that crafts things, and that would fit so well into what we know so far, because Obviously, we know that there's some weird trickery going on with the inhabitants, I guess, of the factory for the, you know, Huggy Wuggy bleeds, which is not normal. All of these small dolls also bleed, which is just not normal. It definitely leans towards the idea that people, or the souls of people or something like that, have been put into these toys, these dolls. And my personal theory is that this was some sort of accident that went wrong. In an attempt to make the most lifelike toys, they actually made alive toys. So I don't think it was necessarily something that was planned. I think the science with the scientists went a little bit too far, and maybe they even used toys to create toys, and the toys didn't fully understand that what they were supposed to be doing was making lifelike toys, not make toys that were alive. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think there's a good possibility that the Mummy Longlegs is filling this role. This is the crafter. This is the one that creates life from toys. Now, if you think about it, that would make so much sense. We initially thought that the cat bee that was dragged off screen was to be eaten, but there's no evidence to suggest that that is the case. I mean, there's no concrete evidence to suggest that's the case. It could be, in fact, the opposite. It could be that somebody was dragging off the cat bee to use to create something else, especially when we consider the fact that whoever this is who's crawled into here seems to have crawled into where all the toys are. So they're taking all of these toys, perhaps to put them together to craft something out of them. Again, very similar to the other mother from Coraline. But my other theory from this small, tiny ARG update is that there is still a person alive in the factory. Now, this person, if they are alive, must be hyper intelligent. They must be very familiar with the layout of the factory. They must know what's going on, and they probably know all the secrets. Now, I think if anybody would still be alive in this factory, it will most likely be Elliot Ludwig, or Ludwig, I think is probably the correct pronunciation. I don't know. But I think the reason why it's most likely to be Elliot is because, after all, he was the founder. He was the person who had the plan all along, and I'm sure he was the person who oversaw the mistake or the science that went too far, whatever happened that caused this factory to be inhabited with creatures like Huggy Wuggy. And so he would be the most likely person to have either a backup plan or to know how to get around this, the most likely to survive. And we also see his name written in the vents multiple times. It's the only name that we see in there. And so whoever's writing in the vents, which again could be a human, I don't know why a doll would, but whoever's writing it is for some reason interested in Elliot, and either they are Elliot or that they know Elliot's still alive, and that absolutely could be Elliot in there with the grab pack hand. Because again, why would a doll, especially one as tall as Huggy, need a grab pack hand? Why would they need it to get around the factory? I mean, it looks like the dolls in this factory seem to have had free reign. You know, they've not managed to get out of the factory, but it seems like they've been able to get around wherever they want because of the vents. Well, we know Huggy has, at least, so we can assume that other creations would know this too. And so it makes less sense that one of these toys would need a grab pack hand, unless there's areas of the factory that you can only get to with a grab pack hand, so it could still be a toy. But if it isn't a toy and it's a human, my money is definitely on Elliot Ludwig. And again, it would make more sense because he is the one that he's known as a genius, right? He's the innovator. He's the one that created all these toys in the first place. And so it would make a lot of sense that now he is using these toys to keep himself alive. Maybe he's crafting distractions, or he's bringing them to life to, you know, distract the other dolls or the other enemies in other areas, or what. There could be many reasons. Maybe he is making them to get through the doors, because we know some doors require toys to be crafted, and maybe he doesn't want to turn on the make a friend machine because, well, we know turning on the make a friend machine draws in some bad guys, so maybe he doesn't want to do that, or maybe they don't want to do that. So this was a very long sort of mini ramble theory video for what is essentially just another GIF, but yeah, this one's actually made me think. I'm starting to piece things together, and I just want you guys who are looking forward to Poppy Playtime Chapter 2 to know that I absolutely will be covering it. I just don't really have, you know, that much to talk about until we get more content. So that'll do for the video. Again, keep an eye out for the channel. I'm going to be covering other games up until Chapter 2 comes out. We're going to be covering Dying Light. We're going to be covering Elden Ring. Very excited for that one. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.